Let's talk a bit about onion and leek planting stock. And there's basically three options for you. You can direct seed, you can use transplants, or you can use sets. So let's talk about direct seeding first of all. The broadest range of cultivars are available from seed. And this can be a way to start a planting. Now, keep in mind that it's going to be less precise from the standpoint of stand if you compare it to the use of transplants or sets. But again, it can be a great way to start a planting. There's about 7,000 seed per ounce for onions and about 9,400 seeds per ounce for leeks. And your approximate sowing rate is going to be about 4 pounds of seed per acre. And we'll talk about some thoughts on spacing here in just a moment. I promised to show you a picture of peatlands or mucklands. This is actually a field of direct seeded onions in New York State. This is in upstate New York, where they have a huge area of onion production that's focused on these very organic soils. Just fascinating to see this. And several thousand acres of onions produced in that part of New York. Now, what about transplants? What about growing your own? And more farmers are choosing to grow their own transplants for onion and leek. Again, you have a wide range of cultivars from which to choose. If you're going to try this, you can plant the seed in cell packs or soil blocks directly. As we see here in this picture here, these are growing in 1.5-inch soil blocks. 1 ounce of seed will give you about 4,900 transplants. You typically want to plant several seeds per cell or block. And then you want to trim the seedlings to 4 to 6 inches before planting. And you'll thin out these seedlings to 1 per cell at planting time. Now, why is it important to trim back the seedlings? Well, there's good evidence that if you trim the seedlings back, you'll end up with stronger, stockier transplants when it's time to plant them out, and they'll take off and grow better in the open field. Of course, you can buy transplants as well. There are suppliers who make a specialty of growing onion transplants and leek transplants and then shipping them north. Typically, this production is in southern states. There's a more limited range of cultivars available this way, but this can be an excellent way if you have a good supply that you can rely on from the standpoint of transplants. And again, you can see what these transplants look like. They're about 6 inches tall. They're about the diameter of a pencil or a little bit larger. This is an example of good quality transplants. They're firm, they're uniform in size. The roots are not completely dried out, and there's still some sugar in the foliage. Sets. If you choose to go with sets are tiny bulbs, and typically you want to choose smaller sets rather than larger sets. And this is kind of counterintuitive. You would think that a larger bulb would be better, but typically if you plant large bulbs, those are the ones that are going to develop into onions with flowers. And as I said before, this is a detriment. It produces poor quality onions. So smaller sets tend to produce better quality onions. Shallots are also started from sets. So garlic planting is started from cloves. And this picture shows an example of different hardneck garlic cultivars. I've run a garlic cultivar trial for many years looking at different garlic strains and their performance in Southwest Missouri. And this is an example of what you would plant. And so basically you take the bulb, you peel off the wrappers, and then you do what's called cracking the bulb. You're not really cracking the bulb, but that's the term that's used when you separate the cloves from the basal plate. And then the cloves are what are planted. Now, if you buy planting stock, typically what's delivered is the bulb, because again, that's a more durable way to hold the cloves. Once you crack them, you want to plant those cloves as soon as possible. And 1 pound of cloves will give you about 90 soft neck plants or about 40 to 60 hard neck plants. Again, this is a reflection of the fact that the cloves are larger with hard neck garlic cultivars. If you do save your own cloves to plant from, say, previous season's harvest, you make sure you do a good job of selecting large bulbs and make sure that they're undamaged at harvest. And if we look at this picture here, this is an example of ungraded garlic at harvest, garlic bulbs at harvest. You notice there's small ones, there's medium ones, there's large ones. Well, you want to selectively group the large ones together if your goal is to save your own planting stock. Hold these bulbs at 50 degrees Fahrenheit, at about 55 to 65 degrees relative humidity, and then they'll be ready to plant in the fall. When you crack these open, you want to select the largest cloves for planting. And particularly with softneck garlic, there's going to be a percentage of those cloves that are small. And given a choice, don't use the small ones, use the larger ones. Again, because there's good evidence that if your goal is large size bulbs, you want to select the largest cloves from the largest bulbs for your planting stock. And then make sure you're very vigilant to select out any diseased or soft cloves. And your nose can be as helpful as your eyes and your fingers, because oftentimes you can smell problems with the planting stock as you're working with it. So if it feels soft, if it looks like it's off, or if it smells bad, don't plant it.